Hello, dear students. This is Industrial Relations and Labor Laws course tutorial. This is tutorial 1.6. The topic of this tutorial: Role of State in Industrial Relations System. The learning objectives are to understand the role of state in industrial relations, to know the various types of state intervention, to know the various means of state intervention. Introduction. The role of state in industrial relations depends on its ideological, political, and socioeconomic orientation. This has a direct impact on the model state adopts for economic development. Say, in a country where socialism or communism prevails, the role of state is relatively higher than where capitalism prevails. The role of state also varies depending on the state of development or industrialization and the level of interaction. So whether the interaction is taking place at international level, national level, industrial level, enterprise level, or shop floor level. So depending on that, the role of state or the state intervention is different. Industrial relations system have been undergoing profound changes in many industrializing countries, principally due to changes in economic situations, and so the role of state in industrial relations. State's role may be weakening in the words of capitalist power. So let's discuss the various types of government intervention or various types of state intervention. It means how the government or how the state interfere or intervene in the matters of labor and industrial relations. So here in the table you have noticed there are three columns. In the first column it is the types of intervention, then what is the specific guarantees and policies in that type of intervention, and in the third column examples are given. The source of this table is World Bank. Well, the first type of intervention, see, it is establishment and protection of workers' rights. So the policies may be relating to, say, right to associate and organize. So that right is given. Then here the example you can see how the workers can organize. Workers can form labor unions. So this is allowed from the government. Then another is relating to protection of workers' right, that is right to bargain collectively. Here the example is workers can negotiate wages and working conditions with employers. So collectively they can bargain what they want relating to their pay and working conditions. Then the third one is right to engage in industrial action. So in parenthesis it is given strike. So in example, workers can strike or use other non-violent means to achieve their demands. So all these are relating to protection of workers' rights. Then the types of government intervention, another is protection for the vulnerable section or vulnerable people. Now here the specific policies may be, say, relating to setting of minimum working age. Example, like children under 15 years of age may not be employed. The minimum age for work is 18 years if the work is hazardous to health, safety, or morals. Then another relating to protection for the vulnerable is equality of wages and employment opportunities. In example, no worker can be paid a lower wage or be excluded from employment due to reasons of gender, race, religion, ethnic background, national origin, or sexual orientation. Affirmative action may be used for disadvantaged groups. Then there is special provisions for women. Say, women workers need to be provided with maternity leave. They may not be compelled to work at nights. Another type of intervention is establishment of minimum. So the policy or the guarantee may be relating to setting the minimum wage level. So here, example, workers are to be paid a minimum hourly wage. Then government may interfere also in the matters relating to compensation for pay. The specific guarantee or the policy may be minimum non-wage benefit and overtime pay. In example, workers are to be provided with housing or medical benefits, a minimum number of holidays in a year, and specified overtime wages for work beyond the maximum hours. Assurance of decent working condition. So this is another matter where government can interfere. Now the policy may be, say, minimum occupational health and safety standards set. So in example, workplaces must have proper light and ventilation, and workers must have protection from hazardous activity. Then another guarantee or policy may be setting the maximum hours of work. So here in example, workers cannot ordinarily be required to work more than a certain number of hours in a week. They must have at least one rest day a week. So all these are for giving relief to workers or giving some relaxation to workers, or so that the workers do not get exploited by the employers. Then provision of income security. So this is another matter where government can interfere. The specific guarantees are like social security, then job security and severance pay, public work, etc. Now here you see in the example regarding social security, workers who are out of work due to disability, layoff, or old age are entitled to transfer payments based on their prior work experience. Then relating to job security and severance pay, workers have some rights not to be dismissed at will and a right to compensation when laid off. Then temporary employment is provided for those willing to work in times of weak labor demand. Now, the types of government intervention, whatever I have discussed, there you might have noticed that those things like minimum wage or maximum hours of work, or say some social security measures, so those, in those matters how government can interfere. So there are some ways or there are some means through which government can interfere or involve in those matters. So those ways you can say as means of state intervention. Now here I'm going to discuss the various means of state intervention. So one way is to frame policy. The policy framework in the sphere of labor and labor management relation can be varied depending on the country's stage and level of development. Then the legislations. The International Labour Standard provide the basis for national laws concerning various aspects of employment and industrial relation. The state develops a framework of collective and individual labor law that establishes employers, trade union, and employees' employment and industrial relations obligation rights. The legal framework usually provides the bare minimum standards. The legal framework need periodical review also. Then institution, through setting of some institution, also state can intervene in the matters of labor and industrial relation. The institution dealing with industrial relation can be classified into facilitative, executive, and judicial institution. Facilitative institution can be of several kinds again. They include, for instance, institutional mechanism for the provision of skills. That means for skill development, those institutions are set up. Then institutions for developing and operationalizing proactive labor market policies will include a national employment service that does not merely register job seekers and play a mechanical role, but one that identifies the gap between required and acquired skill, provides opportunities for bridging the gap, and matches job seekers with job providers. In terms of minimum wage setting, it could include tripartite institution for setting up and enforcing minimum wages. In terms of workplace democracy, it could include statutory and voluntary institutional mechanism for worker involvement, representation. In terms of grievance redressal, it could include systems and procedures for grievance redressal, handling of discipline, and dispute settlement. Executive. So this is another mechanism or institution through which state can intervene. The executive machinery is responsible for laying down rules, enforcing the laws through the labor administrative machinery appointed by the central and state governments. Then the judicial. The authorities described in the Industrial Dispute Act to interpret and adjudicate disputes are a part of judicial machinery. So this particular thing we will discuss again in another topic. Labor courts and tribunals are part of the judicial system. Now, after discussing various types of state intervention and different means of state intervention, I'm going to summarize how the state or the government play its role, or how the government interfere or intervene in the labor matters and industrial relations system. State intervention in labor laws, putting into force some minimum legal standard of working conditions. So whatever is stated in law, that is only the minimal legal standard of working conditions. Employers can or they may improve their working conditions as per the job demands and the employees' demand. State promotes healthy growth of trade unions and set up a well-organized industrial relations to achieve industrial peace and prosperity. The state's role in sustaining industrial harmony is magnificent. So the state need to see that the relations of the employees and employers always remain in such a condition that the production is not hampered and industrial peace and prosperity is also retained. State act as an umpire as it helps the employers and workers with all sorts of mechanism of law so that they can handle all sorts of issues bilaterally. Then state as a protector of labor's interest. So this I have discussed in types of government intervention. So there you can see that how the workers they can protect their interest by forming some employees organization or say trade union, so that is considered as their right. So allowing those rights, and they can have interaction or they can have a talk with their employers and negotiate. That means they can do collective bargaining relating to their pay and their working conditions. So through those they can protect their own interests. That means they means the workers or employees. Since state has the authority and power to regulate the employers and workers, it can regulate their disagreements. State provides framework that supports collective bargaining. Thus, state intervene through the means of policies, legislation, and institution. How actively and stringently the state intervene in those things is determined by the ideological, political, and socio-economic orientation of the government. So this is all about role of state in industrial relations system. So these are the sources from where I have collected the information. So with this discussion, I am concluding today's tutorial. Thank you.